Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. It is Wednesday. That means that tomorrow's Thursday, which means tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. As usual, the Coffee and Coaches conference call. Great Q&A, great people. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. Please join us for that. There is no cost. Just you have to get up early, apparently. Eastern Standard Time, 6 a.m. We'll see you tomorrow for that Q&A. Digging into today's Q&A, this is with Dale. Dale's a powerlifter and working on some shape change associated with some sled dragging. And so we talk about how this actually works because we can be selective as to how we're driving the shape change either towards the pelvis or away from the pelvis. So for instance, if we were to utilize the belt, the strapping system that we actually talked about during this call, we can apply the pressure to the innominate bones, to the ilium, and we can promote a shape change proximally in the pelvis. That's going to allow us to drive internal rotation proximal to distal into the ground. If we were to apply the pressure to the trochanter, we're going to drive the internal rotation from the hip itself into the pelvis. And we're going to drive an earlier representation of internal rotation. And so again, we can be selective as to how we do this depending on the needs of the individual. So Dale's doing some really good stuff with these sled drags, but we'll break that explanation down for you in this Q&A. So thank you, Dale. If you would like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com. Please put 15-minute consultation in the subject line so I don't delete it. Include your question in the email. Everybody have an outstanding Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow morning, Thursday, 6 a.m. Coffee and Coaches conference call. See ya.
So I don't want anybody else in the room. So if somebody walks by, it'll grab them.
Yeah.
But all right. So I know for a couple of weeks now, we've talked about some of my old school stuff that we used to do, box squats, and how it's affected in your model. Yeah. Now, one of the things that we used to do a lot is sled dragging, and I've seen a lot of your videos on sled dragging, and I'm trying to understand the influence of what we do to your model. So I'm gonna give you an example. So obviously I train with a lot of wides.
Yeah.
Just the nature of the beast, right? So we use like a 3-inch nylon toe strap, you know, to pull with.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. We do a lot of backward sled pulling with where we put the nylon strap, let's say around the trochanter. Right, where it hits the trochanter. We use a load light enough that we can breathe really well. We internally rotate the femurs about 5 degrees, put the foot pressure all in the arches, I mean, in the medial part of the arches, and drive back. Yeah. Is that creating a shape change for the wides that are out wide because of the two parts, because of the compression that we're putting on the sides?
Okay. So the premise is useful. Okay. When you're trying to hang on to some internal rotation. Now, here's the thing you're going to have to be careful of. Because of the population that you work with, you got to be careful that you're not creating an anti-orientation under those circumstances. Because if you give up foot contacts, okay, like if you give up the lateral foot contact, so if there's not enough lateral foot contact, then you're not going to be emphasizing relative movement. You're going to create an orientation. Now, from a powerlifting standpoint, might not be too bad because you are sort of reinforcing some elements that you would use to pick up heavy things. If the goal is from relative motion, which is what it sounds like, then you got to be aware of how you're pushing through the ground. Now, because you are pushing through the ground, because you are dragging some weight, I would expect that you would have a fairly strong medial foot contact. The thing you want to be careful of is that you're not lifting up the.
Right. Yeah. We coach is to sense the outside, but kind of put an emphasis on the inside. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you want to stay inside. You want your turn to be inside of your base of support. Right. So under that respect, great. The pressure on the trochanter, great. The pressure through the pelvis, Great. Okay. Because again, it's gonna help reduce. I don't know if it's gonna reduce the orientation, right? But at least it's not going to promote more of it. And so that might be the buffer that you need from a training perspective that allows you to lift with less discomfort, more performance, kind of a thing. So the premise is, I'm like very cool with the premise. What kind of you have a belt that's attached to the?
It's a toe strap. You know, a car toe strap.
Okay, and it's like you said, it's like 3 inches wide.
It's nylon. It's like 3 inches. It's really soft.
Okay.
It cradles your glutes and comes around.
It's not like a spud. Is it a spud strap?
No. This is actually a strap you tow cars with.
Okay, right. Awesome. It stands to reason that only a powerlifter would go, yeah, let's use the one that we tow the cars with because we're going to be pulling enough weight.
Well,
right?
you know, it's back old school because we used to just have different size tires. You know, with cement in it. So, and that's what we used to pull.
I have done that in the past. I used to go to a little elementary school behind my house and drag tires with sandbags in them. Yes, I was poor and I couldn't buy a sled, so I made one out of an old tire. And
now it's a little better.
Yeah.
All right,
tires
so there's one.
Man. That's all I had.
There's one more that we do that I want to ask you about, and it's where we'll pull it sideways, right? And pushing, once again, medially rotating or internally rotating the back leg, the working leg, the leg that's facing the sled.
I know.
5 degrees.
Yeah.
As you push off, mainly, say once again, working on that inside, the medial arch, right?
Yeah.
Pushing out.
Yeah.
As you lift the right, as the away leg lifts, you kind of rotate your zipper towards the femur just a little bit, so you get a little.
Which one?
The non-working leg.
Yes. So you're okay. I know what you're doing.
And once again, we've got it on the trochanter again as we're pushing through, and it seems to make the hip give a little bit.
Yeah.
The two sides.
Like basically, what you're doing is hang on. You're just kind of squeezing in. Whoops. You're kind of squeezing in like that. Like, correct?
Well, I think of it more as the innominate bones moving.
Well, if you're pushing through the trochanter, you're doing that, but you're doing it through the hip. So you're doing it from here medially, right? If you move it up and you put it on the iliac crest, now you're going to get much more of that type of a shape change. So you have to decide. You have to decide
which one you want.
Okay, hang on. So if I create the shape change here, okay, what I'm going to end up with is more proximal to distal IR, because I'm going to hold that shape change as I'm pushing into the ground with my leg towards the sled. If I put it down on the trochanter, I can drive more IR from distal to proximal and then promote the change that way. So you have to decide. It's like, do I want an early representation of that IR that's coming up from the ground, or am I trying to deliver more IR into the ground?
Okay.
Does that make sense? Do you see the difference in the two?
Yeah, I do. I know that when I do it, I feel like I'm ready for my Saturday Night Fever walk.
You're ready for the what?
My Saturday Night Fever walk.
Oh, sweet. Do you do the
a little bit of that? Yeah. Just when you start walking, you can feel the difference after I've done around with that.
Yeah, you'll most likely have a little bit more internal rotation on the lead leg. Yeah. Fun fact: I've seen Saturday Night Fever 150 times. True story. True story. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. Hands down.
I just watched it again last week.
If you haven't seen Saturday Night Fever, if you have not seen Saturday Night Fever, you can't be my friend. True story. Grace, I'm telling you, don't be shaking your head, girl. It's like, I know my movies. Good morning. Happy Thursday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and it is perfect.
My question was about the sequencing of activities to capture the early IR coming from the ground up. Is the reason why you may keep the excursion of the range of motion when you're doing, say, like a short split squat, right? And you're capturing the internal rotation on the front foot. Is the reason why you're keeping the excursion of the range of motion low because you don't want to create so much internal rotation that you start turning the sacrum away from that side, because you're working on accepting the IR up the leg into the pelvis to capture the shape change there?
Okay, so you're talking about like a right foot lead in this situation, correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so which direction is the sacrum facing in a right foot lead? Any kind of right foot lead, like a stagger stance or a split squat?
It would already be starting to go towards the left.
What's
Right.
facing the left? If your right foot's
Yeah.
forward, it's left, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the yield will take place on the right side as she is landing on the right foot.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's a delay. It's not a turn.
Okay.
You understand that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the connective tissue behavior that we're most trying to influence under these circumstances to slow that side down. So as she lands on the ground, that foot is now in contact with the ground. That foot now has to move slower than the other side because the other side now has to come through. So she's got to start slowing that side down. So that's the yielding action on that side. Okay, so that's early propulsive representation. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Sacrum facing the left. If she was to descend into a full split squat, under those circumstances, how far do you think the sacrum would turn to the right?
Let's go back 1 second. You said assume there's no space on the left and she was to descend into a full split squat?
No. If she was to descend into a full split squat, how far do you think the sacrum would turn to the right?
Wouldn't it start turning more towards the left though?
If she was doing a right foot forward split squat.
Yeah.
And she was to descend all the way into the split squat. So
you would maybe go to middle.
Yeah. So it's never going to turn to the right under those circumstances, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your concern?
I was just trying to, I don't know why I had never like thought of it in this way before. Maybe it's a question about like the connective tissue behavior versus like actually capturing the turn. Because then to me, when you started talking about, all right, maybe this is my concern. Okay. When you're always producing a force into a ground when you're standing, because if you weren't, then you would be falling, right?
You'd be or going through the ground somehow. Yes.
Somehow. Yeah. So she's technically producing IR down to the ground from her right leg to her left, right? And then as she's like pulling herself down into the ground to do this.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay. So her lead side, all right, is the side that is absorbing energy from the ground. So she's taking, so the internal rotation is going up through, if we're in a right foot lead, it's coming up through the right side.
Yeah.
Okay. Rear leg, IR is going down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's the more propulsive oriented leg.
They're both propulsive. Okay. They're both propulsive. One is early, one is late. The distinguishing characteristic being the absorption of energy on one side, the production of energy on the other side. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to be clear. So this is the connective tissue behavior in play, right? Because we've got ER representations on both sides.
Yeah.
At the beginning, IR representation in the descent, if you will, if we're still talking about a split squat, just to be clear. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying this for everyone's benefit. Like, I know you know this. I'm just stating it out loud. Okay.
I took no offense.
I didn't think you would. I was stating that so everybody knew why I was stating it, because I know some people are going, it's like, yeah, I know this. And it's like, oh, and then some people going, oh, light bulb.
Yeah.
Right? You never know. You just never know. Okay.
So if I was really trying to work on magnifying the ability to yield posteriorly on the lead leg, right? And I wouldn't want to advance the sacrum towards middle, right? That's when I would use my shorter amplitude stuff.
Okay, now we got to start talking about, so there is, if there's 1 foot on the ground and I'm still advancing the other side, there is always a delay on that grounded side. The question mark is where is it?
Right.
Okay, and my dog barked over me, so I said, where is it, for those of you that didn't hear me? Okay, so as we land on the ground and we're in the ER representation with a counternutated sacrum, we have a delay that would be more towards the sacral base because of the relationship between the sacrum and the ilium. As we move through middle propulsion, right, that delay is going to have to change its relative position. So it's going to move from sacral base, it's going to move inferiorly more towards the apex of the sacrum because of the shape change that has to take place in the pelvis for internal rotation to occur. Okay, so remember, if there's a foot on the ground and it's not moving, okay, so we're moving, if you were on ice, it'd be a different story, right? But because we're assuming that it's secured on the ground and the other side is also moving forward, you have to have a delay somewhere, right? And so this is the goal, is to be able to have the connective tissue behavior that creates the yield at the sacral base. As I initiate propulsion, as I move through middle, it moves inferiorly towards the lower part of the pelvis. Okay, you understand? Reason being, it's like, because I have to have the delay and I have to have the shape change. Problems arise when that doesn't happen. Well, that's your measurement. So you got somebody that doesn't show the early representation of internal rotation, right? And yet they're still performing. So they don't have the shape change that's available that is necessary for them to move from their ER to IR representation, right? Which means they don't have the connective tissue behavior intact, or they can't make the shape change. Now you got people that are trying to produce force in an ER representation, potentially with the wrong connective tissue behaviors.
Right.
These are the problems that we see. Good morning. Happy Friday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right, man, very busy Friday. Digging straight into today's Q&A. This was Zach. Zach had a really good question. He's had a number of athletes that have been showing up with an excessive or an unexpected amount of internal rotation, especially in the hip. This is typically going to show up on your narrow ISA individuals, which he has noticed as well. And we sort of break down as to why this occurs when we have somebody that's got a center of gravity that's shifted way forward where they shouldn't have any internal rotation. So it's got to come from somewhere else. So it's definitely not in the hip, it's definitely not in the pelvis, because you have a pelvis that's behaving as a single bone under these circumstances without relative motions. And so we break this down as to how it occurs, and then I give a nice little demo at the end, which is kind of silly and cute and probably easy to understand. So I'm hoping that works out for you as well. We threw a little bit of Ian in here at the end because Ian's been working on some spinal stuff in the background of things. And so again, we appreciate him for his participation as well. So thank you, Zach. Thank you, Ian. If you would like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com. Please put 15-minute consultation in the subject line so we don't delete it. Include your question in the email. We will arrange that at our mutual convenience. Everyone have an outstanding Friday. Podcast will be up on Sunday. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.
I think I got a quick one, just like a chessboard interpretation question. So I've recently had a run of narrow ISAs that like their ER measures are just like really tough. Like they just like it seems like they just have a ton of ER, but if you narrow in, it seems like the pelvis is moving a little bit. But I'm more focused on the IRs with them, for the sake of this question, that their right IRs are less than the left. I'm thinking hip primarily. For a narrow to get to the point where the right IR is less than the left, is that either an orientation on of the left innominate, like into anterior orientation, or the lumbar spine turning away? That's good, because presumably they should have gone forward on the left first before the center of gravity started going right. So they should have lost the left IRs first. So then I'm just thinking, how do they get back to the point where now the left IR is greater than the right?
Where's the IR coming from?
Is it the lumbar spine?
Okay, it ain't in the pelvis and the hip. Okay,
Right.
You understand that, right?
Yes, that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, but then it's like, okay, how far superior to where I'm actually taking the measure? Where is that turn?
Gotcha. So maybe may even be going higher than the lumbar spine.
Uh-huh.
So presumably, if I've got a narrow that's showing a decent gradient of more IR on the left than the right, potentially you could say they're just like further into compensation land.
I think you could say that with a high level of confidence. So let's just think about this progressively. Okay. So left side of the pelvis goes, it's anteriorly oriented. Okay. ER starts to drop off. Center of gravity starts to go forward on the left. IR starts to drop off because of the anterior compression. But I hit the constraint. Okay. So they can't go, the center of gravity can no longer go forward. I should have no internal rotation whatsoever. But I still have to push into the ground. Orientation starts to increase. So the pelvis is already one piece. It can no longer produce relative motions. So it starts to anteriorly orient more. That's going to turn the spine away. Okay. If it's a narrow ISA, where are they going to start turning?
You say like what level?
Yes, sir.
This was the top down or bottom up question.
Yes.
Say
it to you. Say it to you. Let it help him out.
In the upper part of the lumbar.
So it's top down. It's top down, right? Okay. So segment by segment. Right? So L1, L2, L3. Okay. Now think about this for a second. Where else might I see that exact same turn?
Cervical spine.
How about that? So imagine the cervical spine influencing your hip measure.
Well, I feel like with a lot of my athletes I see, it's even more exaggerated. I think we talked about just the shoulder measures, the weight of the extremity. More, but like a lot of them, their left shoulder IR just flops straight down to 90. Like it's no problem.
Yeah. And you're going like, how is that even possible?
Shouldn't do that based off everything
else. Should not do that. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. And that's part of your tell as to why you go, why do I have this magnified hip IR? And then you go up to the shoulder and you go, oh, okay, I get it.
Everything.
Yep.
Right.
So yeah. But it, again, that gives you your big clue. It's like, okay, this is kind of a big deal.
Alexa, what's the temperature?
You might want to tell you what, I'm gonna mute Dawn. There we go. Thanks, Dawn. What is the temperature, Dawn? Let us know. Okay. Where was I? IR. Okay. So you've got to think about how you're going to reorient this person, right? To get the left side of the pelvis to reduce its anterior orientation. It's like, I got to bring them all the way over, right? I got to move them from right to left as the priority. Then I can bring the left side back. You see it?
Yeah. So I know in the past we've talked, like, let's say you've got a significant bilateral anterior orientation, before like we even think, like, not even saying wide or narrow, but before we think about moving this like back, right, whatever. It's just
right.
Orientation first.
Correct. You have no pelvic relative motion.
So let's specify it to a narrow now where their center of gravity is over the right side.
Yep.
But they've got a a fairly significant anterior orientation on the left.
Yes, sir.
Is there a scenario where you might have to just reduce that anterior orientation on the left first to just before you move them back to the left, like push from right to left because you have no space? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So by moving them from right to left,
is that reducing the orientation?
You're going to start to, yeah. Because again, the spine's going to turn.
All right.
Yeah. Have a conversation with Ian. Because Ian's really into the spine these days. So Ian, as the spine turns away to the right, okay, I get a side bend in the opposite direction that it's turning. You understand? Yes. Okay. And I don't care.
I'm trying to.
It's turning, so it closes the space. So I'm turning to the right, side bending to the left by Friat's laws. Non-neutral mechanics, right? And even though I just said the N word, made me a little sick to my stomach. Thanks a lot.
Sorry to do that to you so late into the call.
No, but it's like that's what I want you to see. It's like all of these things, like all of the descriptions of the spinal mechanics that have shown up in literature are it's okay, but they're trying to fit it into a planar model, which again just creates a massive amount of confusion. If you just look at this thing as helical angles, it's like boom, it becomes like crazy easy. You just go, oh, this one's going down and in this way. Guess what? If I turn it up and out this way, that moves them in this direction, and that's all you're doing, right? So what you could actually do here, Zach, like just the quickest thought possible, a right to left cable lift. You see it?
Yep.
And then you might get a big bang out of it. Like you might get a whole lot.
My head always goes right to left, like sled drag. Is there something different about the cable lift per se, as opposed to like maybe, oh, you're gonna get the thorax a little bit more?
What? Look at where I finished.
Yeah.
You see it?
Yep.
See what I just did? Did I just give you like the entire solution in one fell swoop?
Maybe. Guess we'll find out.
Well, like I said, and that is the correct answer. It's like big fat maybe, in fact, right? Yeah. It's like you don't know whether they can do this or not, but at least you understand the concept, right? You understand. It's like, oh, so here you go. Ian, pay attention. Hang on. All right. So Ian and Zach. So this is for you guys. All right. So every vertebra is just a little man. It's got 2 arms and 2 legs. Okay. Is Taya still on the call? There you go. Okay. So anatomical position. Boom. Right. Okay. So Zach, here's the spine that you just talked about. You see it? Okay. So I'm going to do a right to left cable lift. There it is. You see the turn?
Yeah.
Okay. But do you see that I'm turning on a helical angle? Okay. So as I turn this way, Ian, I'm going to do that. See it? As I hit the constraint. So I got to go to the end. So I can turn like this, and then I start to hit the constraint, and then I go down and in like that. That's the magnified IR. You see it, Zach?
Yep.
Okay. And so I'm just going to turn the mechanics. So I'm going to take my IR representation, and I'm going to move it into an ER helical angle. See it? And in doing so, I create the ER up this way. You see it?
So then, like for that cable chop, wide versus narrow, like maybe for a wide, you don't have the cable like starting as low and they're not chopping as high, versus the narrow starts lower, come a little bit like up more over the shoulder.
Yes. You got it.